Yeah. Okay, so again, welcome. And this is the refresher module of the first three, or the refresher session of the first three modules of the DEI learning trajectory. And you probably know that this trajectory has been developed together with Partos members to basically ensure that there is a support for organizations that are seeking to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion in their organization and actually seek the relevance of DEI in our international development sector and the work that we're doing. It's focusing on organizational policy and change, but also focusing on the personal and organizational accountability and commitment that we can take to create more equitable spaces, but also really dive into the topics that are more closely linked to our proximity to systems of oppression. Think about gender exclusion, think about racism, think about colonialism. So in our modules, we made sure that these elements were integrated, and we will now have a sort of overview of what we've been doing. Nina will go through all of those different modules with some very nice examples. And we will also have a short debrief on what to expect. We would also like to get some input from you on perhaps what you would like to see different in the upcoming modules, if you have any questions, and if you have any suggestions for what after this first learning trajectory. So how we will continue this program. That having said, we're going to move to the next slide. So brief overview, the first three modules focused on building DEI strategies, diversity dimensions and intersectionality, and measuring and monitoring DEI. And the sessions were actually very different. Some of them were facilitated externally by Nina. Others were really a co-created effort with members of the DEI cohort. All of these sessions can be watched back if it has been recorded. I think only module 1 and 3 have been recorded. And we also have a recap of this session, so you can look back at it. And now you see that we're in this part. So we are moving to the second part, in which we have 3 upcoming modules. Starting next week, September, creating a DEI culture and inclusive leadership, which will be facilitated by Ashmita Krishna Sharma. Then we have a section on racial justice, which will be also very exciting, co-created with the Racial Equity Index. Hopefully an in-person session, or hopefully it will be an in-person session, but we're just still keeping you waiting for some of the details on where it will be organized, but I can promise it will be exciting. And then we close off with the role of DEI and of HR and DEI, and hopefully also a closing module or a closing event, which can be in person as well. A little bit about the structure. We follow a very simple structure, which is a monthly opening session, such as the one next week. And then it's followed by walk-in sessions that are basically the moment for you as participants to exchange, ask questions, bring some of the challenges that you might encounter in implementing your DEI work, and having a very open space without basically any rules or boundaries in terms of what we need to discuss. It's really open for suggestions. It's also an option if you have a specific challenge that you would like to address, that you can organize one of these sessions. That is possible just by reaching out to me, or you can even give a suggestion in the Teams channel and then organize a session for everybody. Often there's also homework or at least assignments included that can help you to further implement the topics and the topics that have been introduced in the module. We had a feedback evaluation form about the first 3 modules, and I want to give some of the elements back that we try to include. There's more, obviously, but I think most urgently there was a need for practical tools, so really tools that can help you implement DEI in practice. And Nina and I had a little discussion about this because there is obviously no blueprint for DEI interventions. However, it is very practical if there are some, go-to approaches when it comes to, for example, what are building blocks of a DEI strategy, or how do you approach doing an assessment, and what are the indicators when you want to look at certain elements within your organization. So these are, I think, the practical tools that people have been referring to, and we're going to try to integrate that more in the upcoming modules. And I think it's also the reason why today we are hosting this session, to make sure that there is a reference to some of the tools that we have been sharing, but perhaps it got lost in translation and all the different resources that we shared. More opportunities for exchange and intervention, also in person. So hopefully that will happen. And lastly, keeping the community alive after the DEI trajectory as of now. For the people that haven't, and I think there's many, because I know how many have shared their evaluation, but I would really like to ask you to fill out the survey. It helps us to improve, and it also helps us to reflect on the progress that some organizations have made. And I think it's already nice to see that we are making impact, that organizations have started to implement some of these lessons learned or guidelines. So for us, it helps us to see how we support organizations, and for you, it hopefully also results in more information and better adapted programs. So that is me. I will hand it over to Nina now, who will basically guide us through the day or through this session. Nina?
Thank you, Gigi. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very happy to see you again after a little break, summer break. We thought it's good to have a little refresher, because for those who are following this trajectory, we are already working together for 6 months, and we want to keep it, what Gigi said, a little bit alive. So we do this kind of intermediary sorry session to refresh it, but also to give a lot of space for questions and suggestions, like practical suggestions about DI strategies, intersectionality and diversity dimensions, and M&E. For those who don't know me, because there are 2 persons, I think, who are new, so I'm Nina, the pronouns she, her, and working as DEI consultant. But and so we co-created this trajectory together with Gigi. But this time I will also take another hat, because parallel to my consultancy work, I work as DEI officer in a Dutch organization, which is a social organization based in Amsterdam. And I will take some of very concrete experiences that I had in this organization to illustrate what we learned in the 3 first module, in order to make it a little bit more concrete. Because what we noticed with the mid-evaluation is that people are expecting very much practical tools, which is great, and also what you exchange is during the walking session together, like the peer exchanges. It is maybe important to make it more concrete. So basically, this session, I will go through the 3 first models and then illustrate it by my experience. And then after each module presentation, I will give you the floor to ask any question you want. Really, it's open, it's free. There is no stupid question. And also to share your experience about what you did since the last 6 months. What were the challenges? What were the successes regarding DI strategies, intersectionality, inclusion, and M&E? Is it clear about... I'm looking for reactions. Well, I go on, but just raise your hand whenever you want, if you want to ask questions or to share something. So if you remember well, we started this module by this learning trajectory by a module which was called Building a DI Strategy. And for those who didn't attend, it's really the basics on how do you start, what do you do in terms of diversity and inclusion, and who do you involve. So I don't know, in this room, you remember you had also like a small assignments, and one of the assignments was think with your DEI group, if you have one, of anybody who is engaged into DEI into your organization, to think about why would you engage into DEI. So basically build like a DEI case for your organization, which is linked to your strategy or the overall strategy of the organization, and to define very clearly what does mean in your organization diversity, inclusion, and equity. So my question to you is, who in this room did have like a written form of a DI case for the organization? Just raise your hand if you have. I see. So Nicolette, that's great. I maybe it's good after to share your experience if you want to. And I don't see any other reactions. Jennifer too? Okay, great. May I ask you after also maybe to share about your vision, mission, DI case to the rest of the group? Okay, great. So basically what I did in the organization I work in, which is called HVO Querido, it's what I said, an organization based in Amsterdam, is that I didn't made this DI case of a mission, vision, and definition alone. So what I basically did is that I went to the management team and did provide a survey about when I was new coming. What do you think about DEI within your organization? What are the challenges? What is your interpretation of DEI? And I went to many different actors within the organization to take some input and to make their own definition of DEI. Based on this definition, I made vision and the mission. I can share you maybe the link. It's in Dutch, but you can also Google Translate as an example for you. But really, it's based on the vision of the organization. I would just share you that, and if you come back to the first module, also you will have also some links for diversity and inclusion statements that can be also be visible on some of your organization's website. Just sharing the example. And again, it seems very easy to do this. Did you get it or not? It seems very easy to do that, but it was a result of a lot of work, what I said, to make this definition. And once it's done, it's the thing is to implement it and to make a DEI plan. So then I will come to the assessment of the situation, but maybe I can ask you, Jennifer and Nicolette, how did you do to put it on paper, your DI case or your DI vision mission? Maybe Jennifer?
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, to be honest, we've really been taking baby steps. We've come a long way, I think, from having nothing. And actually, Nina, you were part of the process when we worked on our self-assessment and our values. So we started first with getting clarity on how we see things. That was really important, and we're actually still busy with that. We have a meeting actually scheduled for tomorrow on DEI, and to take our trajectory further. But in terms of the case, what we started doing was to actually put down what it is that we see as important for our organization in relation to these issues. Personally, I think we still have room for growth. I think right now it's more at the level of diversity than it is inclusion, and I think the two are they're different, obviously. But we realized that we had a very undiverse team, and so that's what's been put on paper so far. And the next level is indeed to actually be more proactive about inclusion and how we want to do that within the organization. So it's sort of in pieces, let's say, and the case is partial, but I think it's very consistent really with what we learned in the module trajectory development, that you have to sort of start from, if you start from zero, you really need to start to understand where you are and what you want. So we're still probably a little bit in that phase, but as I said, we have succeeded anyway in putting the diversity ambitions on paper, and we've actually taken them forward also in our hiring policy. So that is moving. But for example, one of the gaps that I see is disability inclusion, and how we normally work with. I'm a person in situation of handicap, not particularly necessarily visible, but it's there. How do we then work with people who need support to do their work, and then also how do we make sure that we have diversity of staff with disability. We also have a partner in our program, Make Way, Liliana Foundation. It works also with disability organizations around the world. So I as the coordinator of that program, but also VEMOS, have a vested interest in being able to work as inclusively as possible with people with disability. So that's kind of where we are. It's a journey, and we're kind of at train station 2.
That's really nice to hear. And what you say, it's a journey, but you did already a lot, and you have already, a bit thought through also to add on existing policies. And about the disability aspect, I want you also to share that we will have in November, I think, a special session about disability inclusion, and especially in link with HR questions, so that you know. What would you need, for instance, at this stage, and because it's this long journey, and sometimes you have things on paper, to put, a step further?
It's a really good question. I mean, I sort of see where we need to go, but in terms of what we need, I mean, I think examples would be really helpful. So I really agree with what Gigi said earlier, that there's no blueprint. And indeed, I mean, for us, the emphasis has sat much more at the level of ethnic diversity, for example, because we are a very white organization. And that's been really successful. Actually, we've been really moving forward on having different people from different backgrounds. But we haven't really also given attention to LGBT issues, partly because we have a lot of people who identify as LGBT in the organization. So it's kind of, you're like, oh, well, that's taken care of. But actually, the future is not secured, right? You never know. That's why it's important to have good governance and good policies on paper, so that when people change, you also have good systems to ensure that things function properly in your organization. So I think examples that we can look at and say, okay, how did they articulate this? Is this how we would articulate it? it serves as a basis for kind of a back and forth in the team on how best to do it. I mean, I've seen stuff on the internet. I've Googled around, but I haven't felt particularly inspired by what I found, but I think maybe I haven't found the right things. And I think you guys are the experts. So maybe if you can guide us with some good examples, that would be really helpful.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Nicolette, I saw also in the evaluation, Oxfam Novib is also very busy with the thematic since a long time. And I was also interested because what I read about it is that you already also put some priorities about your DEI strategy. Could you share maybe how it went, maybe very briefly, but how did you get to the stage of, the big, question about what do you do with diversity and inclusion, and to define these 5 priorities right now?
Perhaps it's good to keep in mind that Oxfam Novib is a big organization. Organization with 300 plus persons, so that put it a bit in that perspective. So DEI, I mean, Oxfam Novib is part of a bigger Oxfam Confederation, and Oxfam work very much focuses on inequality. So in a way, DEI has been part of our work, but in many other ways also not. We 2018, we had a big integrity issue. It affected also many other organizations, but the most directly Oxfam. So integrity came up as an issue. And in 2019, the whole Oxfam Confederation embraced feminist principles. And feminist principles are very much also about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The reason why it got as a separate issue on the agenda was June 2020 with George Floyd being murdered, that we thought that a group of people in the organization said, how can Oxfam be so silent on this happening? Why don't we have a very crystal clear position on this? So from that discussion emerged a request to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee in the organization. So we asked for a committee instead of an officer, because we thought that would help us in getting everybody along, because DEI is not something that an officer can do, is not something that the committee can do. You really need to do it together. It's very much supported by our board of directors, also supported by managers of different units. At the same time, it's not something, the commitment doesn't say what is going to happen. So what we did in 2022 was that we committed a diversity assessment or review, whatever you call it, went through all our practices and policies for what concerns the Netherlands, because the country offices we work with are not managed or steered through Oxfam Novib, so we don't have much say there. So that's why we focused on the Netherlands. And that resulted in a whole list of recommendations. So what the DEI committee that was established end of 2021 decided to do is then to focus on categorizing those different recommendations, seeing who would be the logical stakeholder to consider taking that on, and then as a committee discussing that with the different stakeholders. Well, it was, I think, about 40 different recommendations, quite a lot. And yeah, we try to engage with all stakeholders from the thinking also that a committee cannot instruct anybody to do anything. So that to engage and make the commitment go naturally. Having said that, that went very slow. So also some other people said, yeah, if you want me to do diverse recruitment, give me a target. Well, we couldn't give that target also because we were thinking, well, that is not our role. We are to promote and to monitor what's happening, but not to give direction. Then we got a little bit more the space from the board of directors to take a bit more the lead on a few topics. Amongst others, the diversity, but also in designing a roadmap. And what the board of directors asked us also was to please prioritize, because we cannot do everything at the same time. It's clear that we can do a lot of things, but let's prioritize, because the diversity, equity, and inclusion trajectory is not the only thing. We have a cultural change program with a group of 20 active colleagues who work on a culture change in the organization. We have something similar at the level of managers and directors. There are different informal groups within Oxfam Novib who also do their own thing on LGBTQI rights or voicing interest and activities for young Oxfam Novib employees, working on feminist principles, different things. So these things nicely reinforce each other and make also that a lot happen. And in June, we came up with a second version of the roadmap that really has 5 priorities. 2 are related to human resources, 1 to communication, 1 to facilities, and 1 to specific DEI awareness. We have a budget of 10,000 that we can spend on activities, which sounds a lot, but at the same time, if you want to organize sessions, awareness raising sessions with consultants, that budget is gone very quickly. But the roadmap we have discussed now at different levels in the organization, and overall people are supportive, very supportive on it. And we really feel that we make small steps forward in this journey. I think that's the most important that I can, yeah, and we are starting now a staff diversity assessment, and linked to that also a diversity pay gap assessment. So we engage with an expert organization on that, because it is you need to do that GDPR sensitive, and so we ask help for that. But that's an important thing to have to set a target for how we can define how diverse we want to be, what that means in practice. And yeah, at the same time, at the level of HR, a lot is happening also with regards to diverse recruitment, developing tools and training also for managers in and other staff involved in recruitment.
Thank you, Nicolette. Well, that's so inspiring also, because I recognize a lot also into the work I'm doing in my organization. I think also the size has, what you said in the introduction, has also an effect on that. When you say, for instance, 10,000 euros is maybe something small for an organization, it's also very much for another organization from a smaller scale. But I'm so happy that you share that, and that to see that these steps are becoming more and more concrete. So don't hesitate to share also like resources, the roadmap or whatever, you know, to inspire also other people for their own journey. But thank you very much for sharing. Simone, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I have a question, Nicolette. Is the strategy especially linked with culture and intent for Oxfam Nova, the Netherlands, or is it also linked with the project? So awareness, for instance, what you are doing, what kind of support you are doing in your project, this abroad.
It is meant primarily to make sure that we have our house in order. We do a lot of programs, have the intentions to program according to our feminist principles, but if you don't know what it exactly means, then you need much more awareness raising on that. And one trajectory that I didn't mention, but it's equally important for this, is that like many of our sector organizations, we are working on decolonization, on power and privilege, shifting power to the global south. Fantastic concepts, but not that easy to really apply in an active way. So definitely it's very much linked to that. So we also, as a committee, we are linked to those different trajectories taking place. I think that is the best that I can answer. So the idea is also, if you talk, for instance, about LGBTQI rights, we have to translate that into our work. We have to also to discuss that with our offices in the different countries. And Oxfam being a member of a big confederation, we have an informal DE&I group at the level of the Oxfam affiliates, like Oxfam Nova is the Dutch affiliate. And we have an D&I group at the level of Oxfam International that's much more focusing to the country offices, regional offices that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Gigi, can we move on to the next slide? So that, yeah, exactly. So thank you for the illustration of both of you, Ramos and Oxfam Novib. I think what you did is actually explain is actually also following a little bit the steps, what we explained in the first module. So again, so to build a DI case and then assess the situation. Or you can assess the situation with an external consultant, which we also did in our organization, HBO Querido. That means that we, by a neutral consultant, made 20 interviews within the organization. In our organization, there are 1,700 employees, and so it's a big one also. But the thing was to go into in-depth interviews in order to gather information about cases of discrimination, but also the view of individual employees about the feeling of inclusion right now in the organization. So the thing is to create a safe space to share things, and especially so I'm focused also on the negative sides, what we could improve by our DI policy or strategy. And there came a lot of information that could feed our strategy. For instance, in our organization, the big question, of course, like a lot of organization is a question of racism, but also like discrimination on the workplace, really like insulting people or colleagues like getting very aggressive towards each other. So we need to have a special plan about how you address racism and discrimination on the workplace. Besides the assessment, we did also a lot of visits per location, because there's a lot of locations too, to ask questions to people, but also in an informal way to have a sense about the situation right now. What I also find important is when you have your strategy in place, or not a strategy, but when you want to initiate something with DI, and you have different teams, it's important to have a prior discussion with the teams to know about what you can do exactly in the teams, and to gather ideas from others makes it more easy than to create buy-in in the organization. And then you begin that since the beginning. So whether you are a big organization or a small organization, the thing is to have this discussion, to put it on the agenda regularly, and to ask questions about what are the challenges, what can we do, what are the low-hanging fruits that we can, decide on, and then what are the priorities. It hasn't to be like as complicated, let's say, as by Oxfam Novib, but it can be also like this discussion, and to base that before this information before making this strategy. Nicolette, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, what I wanted to add, and that may be an advice to other organizations also, because of the request to share resources and to get more practical tools. In February of this year, Oxfam Novib signed up on the Diversity Charter of the Social Economic Council, the SER.
Oh yeah.
And I really can recommend that. There is, be it in Dutch, there is an awful lot of information and tools and different exchange moments on DEI. And personally, we also thought as Oxfam Novib, yes, we have our plan, we have our things, but it's also nice to do that publicly, because then also publicly you have to hold yourself accountable. So when you sign up, you have to make a plan of action. You're also supported in doing that. So I can only recommend that.
Yeah, thank you really much for adding that, Nicolette. I just added also the link to this diversiteit in het bedrijf for the Dutch-speaking people, but I think they also now are beginning to work in English, I guess. But yeah. Indeed, so this Charter Diversiteit in het Bedrijf also gives you like a framework which you can follow or not follow, but it's really also accountable, but also it gives also a lot of resources about, for instance, inclusive recruitment or particular questions. So it's thank you for the tip, because it's a very nice framework to follow. So again, establish recommendation and priorities is a third step. Well, in our organization, what we did this year, and again, these priorities can change from year to year. So when you start, I would recommend, to start also about this informative part and communication about what is the group or the DI committee or the people involved doing. So we made a lot of sessions within teams about to explain what is diversity in our organization, to engage the discussion within teams about the existing diversity, what is missing, what we do. We did a lot of communication on the intranet. We celebrated like diversity days, to initiate the conversation about I don't know, Ketikoti within the Netherlands, so the celebration of the end of slavery, or about Pride, or about Ramadan. So to begin, to start this culture of sharing knowledge, but also this kind of sensibility that you are taking it seriously within your organization and you want to do something with that. So that could be also this parallel thing about raising awareness. We did also something about designating DI ambassadors, to speak about it from the DI committee, or we organized an exhibition about these ambassadors. that I will show you a little bit later. But this kind of, communicate about what you are doing or that you are taking it seriously within your organization. Another thing is about learning about DEI. Again, our organization is not specialized about that, but we need also to learn from external networks, but also creating like subgroups like a LGBTQI group, which is like making a training about LGBTQI awareness raising within our teams, or we are developing a training about how to work with clients. It's in the health sector with a sensitivity towards different cultures, so interculturality or just sensitivity. So that's also very nice because we are developing that. We are working about an inclusive leadership program. So that's also the things about getting knowledge about how to have an inclusive attitude and using also an inclusive language. And then, of course, there is also the policy and procedures aspect, and that is also linked to adapting HR procedures, making some special policies regarding, for instance, disability, accessibility, and for instance, we have also an LGBT a policy about, hanging flags on all the offices of this kind of stuff. We are also encouraging to introduce gender-neutral toilets, and also we signed up about this diversity charter, also to to be accountable and to follow a little bit also what is happening in the in the same field or even a little bit further. So that are really concrete things that we did like in priorities, but now I also noticed that when that's done, there are other priorities coming, like what I said, like working more on discrimination, working more on leadership involvement and engagement, working more on awareness raising. So you have to assess that every year. I see Jennifer. That's nice. Okay. Maybe you can share also the contact of this training.
Yeah, no, it's sure. We worked with somebody from South Africa who actually teaches on these issues, and she was willing to, as a consultant, to come in and do a training. And so we had a virtual training, and it covered communications, intercultural communications, in the sense of understanding where people are coming from. So there was sort of an intersectional component there, being sensitive also to the positionality of people with whom you're speaking and how they view their positionality. But we also then just had practical examples, like, for example, she had a case of an English worker who is a colleague who's working with a South African colleague, and who isn't being sensitive about the background of colonialism and the apartheid background and so forth. She talks about, oh, you're on African time, she says to the other colleague. And so we worked through that case, like how we would feel about it, how should we avoid speaking that way, etc. So it's also very practical, and I really enjoyed it. And I can share the name of this person with people if they want to work with her. But I was very, very disappointed because at the same time, everyone who was there was from the African context that were from our program. And even though all of the colleagues in the Global North organizations that we work with were invited multiple times, nobody attended. So I communicated this, kind of in a bit of a, kind of way, but I think it says something to me. I mean,
this is where management has to step in.
Yeah, it's to me. I mean, again, it's only one example, right? I can't condemn people for just one incident. Maybe it's just a weird fluke. It was sort of the universe conspired against us, but it's just makes me suspicious. I have the feeling that we here in the Global North, we think, well, we're okay. We're doing this okay. And I suspect, we don't need an intercultural communication. Well, we know how to talk to people. We're global citizens. We travel all over the world, so of course we know how to talk to people. I think there's a bit of that, right? And meantime, it was it was super well attended. We had a lot of collaborating partners who were, working on the ground who attended. I didn't even expect them to attend. I invited them, but I didn't even expect it because they're so busy with the implementation. But they did, and we had a really, really robust participation. But yeah, so it's something. As I said, we're on a journey, Nina. But this is not just Vamos. I mean, it was, as I said, the other northern partners.
Thank you for sharing your thought, and I think Felicity, you have a very good remark, maybe linked to that. Do you want to elaborate on that, or you just want to write it in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I couldn't put my camera on, but the lights have gone out in my office, so it's just darkness. Indeed, often issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion are seen as someone else's problem. And I think that's also a defense mechanism. It's an easy out, and it's what we see as a justifiable excuse not to participate. And I think that's a real serious problem, to create an understanding about what diversity, equity, and inclusion really means, and where that it's helping everybody. I think when there is a personal benefit for individuals, then there's more buy-in, but it's really difficult to create the understanding of what a person who comes from a position of power stands to gain from participating in an exercise or in a learning session that might take away that power. So it's balancing those nuances and being able to have really difficult conversations. But indeed, the comment after that by Nicolette about making things mandatory, it can be useful, but it can also shut people down internally. So how do we softly, gently create an environment that makes people understand that they stand to gain from a more inclusive environment? And I think that's the important part.
Absolutely, I'm so agree with you, Felicity. And this conversation is going on because it's also based, I have to see a little bit of the time, but diversity is very different according to the context of organization, the culture. But what I do also is to engage the conversation within teams. I use a method which is called the diversity mandala, and you engage, individual reflection about what is important for you as an individual regarding identity markers or aspects, and to give the space, like in small groups, to speak about what you want to share with your colleagues. And often from this conversation, you initiate a conversation that you actually don't have usually with your colleagues about, by the way, I have this life experience of I'm living that. So instead of making it like, no, I am from this group or this group, and I want, to hide it or show it or whatever, is about initiating this conversation into these spaces. And then people learn a lot about colleagues, and then you can, speak about diversity, what is now important for your organization to support or not support, or to valorize, or to learn more about. So that is maybe an example. Jennifer, I see that you raised your hand, but I just maybe go a little bit faster because we have another, we are running a bit out of time, if it's okay for you. Gigi, can you go to the following slide, please? Yeah, just so when you remember in the module 1, we also gave a framework, which was a kind of theory of change, that you could follow if you want, to have a kind of framework within your organization about DEI strategy. Is you don't have to copy paste it, but you can adapt it to your organization. If you go to the next slide, Gigi, you will see an example of, well, I did exactly the same, but now it's horizontal, following this framework, and with very, it's an example of how you make it into a framework and a strategy with the overall ambition, the goal, objectives per levels of interventions, organization, HR, community level, the leadership level, and the individual level, and to put 2 priorities. I will not go into detail about that. You can also take a look quietly after, but that's an example that we use in our organization. Gigi, can you go to the following one? Yeah, there we will go a little bit more quick because we just raised the question now, but about the diversity dimensions and intersectionality, if you go to the next slide, Gigi, we made our own definitions about, in our context in Dutch, well, an organization within Amsterdam, what was important for us. That means that you have to do also choices. And the thing is not to put everybody in a category, but it's more to name things, because if you speak about diversity in general, people will, you know, have assumptions and stereotypes and their own understanding. So we go through all dimensions and we engage a discussion around this dimension, which is important for us, but maybe not important in another context. The following slide, please, Gigi, about M&E. Well, that's, I think, the most difficult thing, because I think, but that's my approach of work, is even though you have a very, you know, nice frameworks with objectives and indicators and outcomes, the thing what I notice is that the course can also vary a little bit according to the involvement of the stakeholders, the change of the social environment, the things that are initiated without that you have planned that for in advance. So this flexibility is also needed before you have, you know, integrating everything in a PMEO system. That's my point of view, but maybe there are other views on that. But to share a little bit more about that, what I said, we begin with this baseline assessment, but which was really focused about qualitative interviews and having input from underrepresented employees, let's say. We have also data, HR analytics about few, you know, few numbers, and especially when it's coming to discrimination cases or sexual harassment cases, that we have information from the I don't know how it's called in English, but the confident person, which is external to our organization, so I can access to this data. And of course, the employee satisfaction survey, which I really thought to have at least one question about, have you been discriminated or felt excluded within our organization, so that I can gather this data to prove that it's necessary to work on it. The second thing is also like demand also a biannual or annual meeting with the board, and yeah, I can do that after, Lara. I will share that also maybe in the, I think in the PowerPoint, I will write it down so that you can have it after. What we, I think it's also really important to integrate that in your yearly reporting and ask to the management team and the executive board, let's say, or the board in general, it depends on your organization, to really ask for an evaluation meeting every year or biannual meeting, so that people are still, you know, engaged in that, and not that it's just work which is, you know, separate from the rest. And in that regard, we have also a kind of audit. I don't know if you know it, but in the Netherlands, there is something which is kind of old, which is called the Rozenloper audit, but which is really focused on gender and sexuality, but now it's a bit more general. So every year we have an auditor coming to different locations to ask, how are you, you know, how are you doing in regard to diversity and inclusion, which is also nice, because then we have also this external accountability, you know, system. And again, I repeat, this Charter Diversiteit in Bedrijf is really also nice within the Netherlands. I don't know in other contexts if it exists. I'm sure that there are also other ones. We have spoken, of course, about the equity index and the racial equity index, which will maybe more fit into the field of in your field. Well, that there is also like you can come back into the module 3 and see also what those two indexes can bring you in terms of M&E. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Gigi, just to see, yes, what we offered you in the beginning was a kind of also like a direction that you could take. Again, it's based on this theory of change that I showed you just before, with different outcomes. That can be also a guide for you to have in order to make priorities, but also to see it on the long term, but also to define very clear indicators. And what I did, for instance, but I don't know if I can share that, but you can really then make it clear, like, I don't know if I can share my screen. Yes. Oh, can I just share very quickly, Gigi, just to show, and then I can, like, then you can also have a very, concrete plan like this one, with all the intervention that you have, to which outcome it is. Sorry, it's in Dutch, but just to make an example about how it can be detailed. The results that you want to achieve, like with indicators, who is taking action, how much hour it costs, and how much, and the planning of the timeline. I think this one is really detailed, because as you see, it's really about all the dimensions of the theory of change, and it's for a plan on 5 years. But I think it makes it also very concrete and very tangible also for the management team and the director to understand how much time investment and how much cost it would involve, but also who is then responsible, and then putting their names also into the people who have to take ownership about that is also asking for more engagement. I can, I guess, share also this. I don't know if I will ask also not to share it externally, because it's also an internal document, but I think it's okay to share to you if you promise that you keep it for yourself and for your work. So that's a little bit about concrete. Oh yeah, and Gigi, can you maybe share the last slide, and then we will open also the room for more general questions. So come back also to the survey that we sent to you in the beginning of the year, which was a kind of checklist with different outcomes and indicators to see how you progress. And it might be an inspiration for you to give a direction, a general direction of monitoring and evaluating the outcomes you defined. So next slide, please, Gigi. I think this is important because that sounds very dry and very, and I think, and that's my approach also for the work of DI work, you have to make it also a little bit fun and engaging people in nice things. So especially when you have a DI committee, like you see here above, like these people are people who are involved, but we are having drinks together. We are seeing each other every month. We are doing like sometimes activities, go to the museum. And I think it's important to have this group and to keep it alive. And that's also work and per se to facilitate that is to have this group and, to involve people on a long term is really important. So what we did, and that was the first thing that we decided together, was to do a storytelling workshop about people themselves, why they are engaged for diversity and inclusion, and what are their experience, life, identities, etc. And we made like nice portraits by a professional photograph and made an exhibition out of it. With when you scan, on a QR code, you can read the story of these people. And the thing was not, to do this kind of diversity washing that you can see, oh, we have faces of every color and every, style and etc. and to show it within the organization. But it was more to give inspiration to organization to join the DI committee by showing faces and stories. And that was a host process, which was really nice, and that attracted also other people to, to be part of a group, because it's a very big step, to get into a group which is already formed and to be able to share your own story. And as this group is already formed, and share that broadly within the organization. So this exhibition will go from location to location to inspire people. Also with very nice, how do you say that in English, quotes also that they said. So it's really giving a face and a story behind, you know, DEI, and not, you know, general definition and terms and a vision and mission. A second thing was, you know, on the right side, there is so this kind of flower, that was this diversity mandala that I was talking about, that is this method to engage this conversation about different diversity aspects within teams. It works very well because people are happy to speak about that in small groups. And it's very, I use it all the time. So I can share you the framework and the method also to engage a conversation around diversity. And another thing that we did, but that was really because we have a focus on cultural and ethnic diversity and LGBTQI. So for this year, because of in the Netherlands, the context for LGBTQI is getting a bit backward, so we decided to do a kind of declaration of why we stand for it. And with this declaration, we gave a toolbox with a flag to hang, or, you know, cards with, you know, questions to go into a discussion within your teams, with a kind of quiz, you know, do you know what is, you know, this kind of transgender, or do you know what you can do if you, you know, have this situation? And it's this kind of small things that you can engage people with a more funny way, light way, and it works for what I see. I think it's also that is important to be also a little bit creative, and to invent also this kind of interventions which are creating visibility and engaging the discussions. I'm just looking at the time. We have 10-ish minutes left. So Gigi, I think you have maybe something to add, but let's take maybe not 5 minutes to ask questions about this presentation, and also generally give the space for the questions about the learning trajectory in general. Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. Thank you so much. I found it very, very valuable, very practical, really helpful. So I really look forward to being part of this and looking at these slides too. So hopefully they'll be available also to us quickly. What I wanted to just say, it was my earlier comment. I'm really concerned about the fact that the organizations we work with, and also just the European context itself, that's my personal opinion, is inherently colonial. I think our sector comes out of colonial approaches and methods and activities. But also, I think if you grow up in a European culture, it's embedded. I mean, that's my personal opinion, huh? But even if you don't believe that, I do think most of us would agree that the development sector has struggles with those issues. And so I wonder, not to complicate our lives too much, I'm looking at Gigi here, but I know that Partos has worked a lot on decolonization. And I wonder if we couldn't also, within this trajectory, try to do a bit of a mashup on some of that work, because I think understanding why we don't have inclusion and diversity, at least in the European context, and again, this ties back to my comment about the training on intercultural communication, right? There's an arrogance that comes out of colonial attitudes, and I think we need to really dig and unpack those. And I think if we do, and we confront them, and we address them, and we work with them in honest and transparent ways, we actually can get much farther on inclusion and diversity. But that's again, please accept that that's my own opinion. I'm not trying to convince everybody that it's exactly the way I say so, but this is at least what I think is important.
Thank you so much for this comment. I personally can say that I do that I agree with this. You can say observation, but also statement. I think from the onset we try to integrate a decolonial and anti-racial mindset in this training, in this module. We had a very inspiring event, actually, Jennifer, just before summer break on a decolonization symposium in which we explored what a decolonial DEI approach may entail, actually. We have a recap.
I was traveling.
We have a recap of that session, but I hope that this will be part of the discussion that we will have each time. And there has been a proposal from Larissa from Free Press Unlimited to actually host another session, one of those walk-in sessions, specifically on the matter of decolonization and DEI. So perhaps that can be a nice starting point. We also will obviously dive into this when we are focusing on the next module, or module 5, on racial justice. So I think we can perhaps take it from there. But point taken, and I think that we should definitely keep this in mind because it's interlinked.
Yeah, just to respond super quickly, and I mean, I'm interested in the racial justice work, and indeed, I was concerned though that it wouldn't, tie into the decolonization discourse, but clearly it will, from what I understand. But I also would really know how to also have these conversations, because I think there's such blinders on, on this issue, and I just think people don't really see it. So how can we, are the practical tools to have these conversations? Like you have this mandala, how can you unpack and people make people see in the mirror what there is? I think it's really difficult. But anyway, I wanted to give space to others.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. I just see that Lara raised her hand since some time. So Lara, please.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting to see your journey within the organization as an example. I was quite inspired by that document that you showed for just 1 second about how you assign responsibilities for particular aspects of the work across the organization. And I was wondering if it were possible, and if you're comfortable, to just talk us through that structure for a few minutes, how to structure this kind of smart task distribution within the organization, because I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's working on D&I work next to my actual job, so as part of a committee and things like that. And it would be good to see how that can be managed in a smart way. I'm not hearing you. I'm wondering if that's just me.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was on mute. Because of sake of time, I will share this document. But basically, what this framework is showing is like a basic, kind of planning management / or whatever tool, which is, starting from the objective or the goal or the, what you want to reach, then put some activities that will feed this goal, and then from that, but that is really this framework. You can really share it. Then from that, to put some indicators and to put some people who will actually deliver this activity, and then you can measure it in terms of time or budget. But this is really a basic framework. You can use any kind of things. I think what is more important is to start, to have these outcomes and these priorities. It can also come in the contrary, to have some activities and then link it to outcomes. But it's really how you feel great to work with. I mean, I do that because I'm really, structured and want to put everything in, in a structured way. But some people will do in another way. So I can share you this document for inspiration. And again, I think you can also, if you don't read Dutch, you can also translate it via, I don't know what kind of a translation thing, because it's not really complicated to understand, but I can share it for inspiration if you want to.
Thank you.
Vera.
Yes, my question is actually about what Simone also put in the chat. Because what I really like about the files that you shared in your PowerPoint today is that it shows really clear objectives, and also the page on your website on DNI. It's a very clear statement of what your organization stands for. And I think we really need to still work on that within PUM, especially like on our website, with a clear statement of what we stand for. And specifically, we work in Uganda as well, and there are now very non-inclusive laws there, so to say. And yeah, we are looking for some practical examples of how other organizations deal with that. So how they communicate about it, so what they actually do. So yeah, do you have any examples on that?
So somebody has experiences to share regarding that. I can maybe react directly about that. I think the thing that matters is that there is ownership on, you know, on people you work with in specific countries. So, you know, the law of the context you cannot influence from the Netherlands, and you shouldn't, because we are, you know, trying to decolonizing our mindset. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't, you know, take it like we have an influence on that, but you can engage a discussion with, you know, LGBTQI organization if you are working with those in Uganda, to see they are really good in advocacy and know exactly what the context is and what is good or not good for, you know, this context. So I would definitely ask for that, and absolutely not communicating about something that is not, you know, spoken about with the actors who will, you know, face the situation and any possible backlashes that you can create. So my like spontaneous answer, but I think other people here have a lot of experiences in this field. Somebody wants to react?
Yeah, I think I've been around the block for sure, but I don't think I have really perfect answers, huh, Vera? I mean, we do exactly what Nina was saying. Like, we really work closely with the advocates, and we have a risk working group within our program, for example, where we discuss regularly what the situation is in particularly sensitive countries or you know, in the context. We stay up to date on the news as well, you know, to try to keep up with what's going on, to try, you know, and loop back again to the partners and to the advocates saying, is this the case? This is what we're reading. What are you seeing on the ground? You know, it's really just a constant, if the situation is very volatile, it's a constant contact. It's very time intensive. It's very stressful as well. It takes a lot of emotional energy from you, especially if you're really scared for people who are on the ground. But that's the reality. Of course, you have to have a series of policies to underpinning all of this stuff, safety and security policies and so forth. But in terms of really trying to help support people stay safe, it's an intensive process with various people needing to be involved, and you need to put money behind it as well. Because, for example, if they need legal support, medical, psychosocial support, or whatnot on the ground, you need to be able to be flexible within your funding, if you can do that, to have a bit of money put aside to support for emergencies. I mean, I can, you know, talk to you more about it sideways, you know, at some other point, Vera. We have whole systems for that, but there's not like a one package answer in exact, you know, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's good to perhaps keep updated about it.
We don't hear you so much. I think your microphone is.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, Vera, your microphone's really shitty.
Oh.
I just said we can keep each other updated.
I think it's also an advice to go also to organizations, and especially on this question, because I used to work it, and we have also Rohit here from COC Netherlands, who is really specialized about these questions, and they do work also in countries and have, you know, a good, you know, track record about that. But I think also about other organizations. I mean, this is really specific, this question, but I would go to organizations who have a long experience in this regard. I think we are already a bit ahead of time. Gigi, I will pass you the word.
Yes. I think I'll just keep it to basically reflecting questions on the modules that are still going to be organized. If there are any questions practically, any needs that you want to express. So that's the first question. And the second one is, do you already have some ideas on how you would like to see this learning trajectory continued in 2024 and beyond? And then there's a last request, which I will also share in the chat for those who have also participated in the first 3 modules. If you can complete the evaluation form, but I'm not sure if anyone here has been an active participant, but I'll leave that up to you. So any questions or suggestions, ideas?
It's good. I mean, what you suggest. I don't have anything more to say right now.
Yeah. And in terms of because in November this module, like the learning trajectory will end, and we're currently not thinking about repeating the whole thing again, because I mean we as a group already came this far. So it would be interesting to know how learning and what type of learning should be continued within this space. If that's really focusing on very specific, like challenges that we have identified throughout the course, if it should be more on, for example, individual capacity strengthening, like if you would like to gain more skills, for example, in how to pick up difficult conversations or facilitate DEI within your organization. So these types of considerations that we can take along. And obviously, maybe you might not have the answers right now, but feel free to share that with us. There's also in the evaluation form a specific part where you can give advice or suggestions.
Yeah, I certainly will think about it, Gigi, and also discuss it internally. As I say, we have a meeting tomorrow in DEI, so I'll raise this as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also good if I'm not the only one from us in this work, so I'll put that on the agenda as well. I think for me, what would be nice, it just pops in now, but it would be, I need to think about it more, but maybe some sort of intervisi group that would meet occasionally or maybe quarterly, I don't know, or ad hoc as needed, where we can have a safe space to discuss the issues we're dealing with in these processes. Maybe that's an idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else from the group? Felicity, yeah.
Something that comes to mind, and just from experiencing these sessions, is that a lot of us work with partners at the local level. And when we're sitting in these conversations, we are working from a position of reflecting on our experiences, but I feel like it's only half the information. Is it possible somehow to bring Global South organizations who we're working with to unpack these issues, maybe a case study, and also to be careful to protect them, of course, because then that's a sacrifice on their side. But it would be nice, I think, because I think we have half the story. There are a lot of experiences, a lot of nuances, and a lot of surprising spaces where DEI comes out. The tone of emails, transport arrangements, salary scales. There's so many different aspects of DEI outside of our interpersonal interactions that I think would be great to unpack and dive into.
Yeah, on point. We also had a conversation, Nina, when we were brainstorming about this, and sort of like contextualizing DEI beyond our organizational walls, right? Very relevant. So that's definitely something that we could explore. Yes, I think, I mean, you're welcome to hang around. I think it would be nice to receive some input by mail if you have any suggestions or questions. So let me know. There is a final slide which I will not share, but it's good for you to know that we have a recap of every module on our Teams channel. And if you're able to access the Teams channel, you will find all those documents, relevant resources as well, which you can use to reflect on what has been happening in the past 3 modules. We also have a resource document, which is a living document in which I am actively sharing some resources that might be relevant for each of the modules. You're also more than welcome to share resources. And yeah, so it helps to give some background information on all the different things that we're discussing each time. But you can find that in our Teams channel, and it will also be included in the PDF PowerPoint presentation that we will share afterwards.
Susie, can you please reshare? Because when I went into it, it was still showing things being empty. So I think it's just not refreshing somehow.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm an external person and Office 365, you know, doesn't like me as an outsider. I don't know.
Yeah, it's challenging with
I know we use it too. It's
But I will reshare it, and then hopefully it will work now.
I have to say goodbye. My battery's running out. It's gonna go shut down. Bye.
All right. Any other questions, suggestions? Nope. Then I am also going to move out. Thank you for participating today, and hopefully see you next week on the 14th of September.